As champagne glasses clinked and the string quartet played a soft rendition of At Last, I stood frozen in the middle of the Vineyard's ballroom, humiliated in front of 30 strangers, guests at my daughter's engagement party, being barked at like a caterer instead of the woman who raised the bride. "Mom, could you clear the dessert table? Jason's aunt says the plates are piling up," Chelsea said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My hands were still sticky from replenishing the hors d'oeuvres she'd asked me to prep last minute. I stared at her, stunned. "I'm not your employee," I said firmly, barely above a whisper. But she heard it. Everyone heard it. Her perfect engagement smile dropped. A pin could have dropped louder than the silence that followed. Some guests chuckled nervously. Others looked away. But the real silence came when Angela Wallace, Jason's estranged aunt, walked through the doors in her black heels and vintage pearls, carrying a single yellow envelope. Maybe now's the right time to tell everyone why this wedding shouldn't happen at all. That moment, that exact frozen second, was the culmination of months of small humiliations and subtle erosions of dignity that I never thought my own daughter would inflict on me. But to understand how we got here, to this ballroom filled with wealthy strangers and shattered expectations, I need to take you back to where it all began. 6 months ago, Chelsea bounced into my little bakery just after the morning rush. At 52, I'd finally managed to open my own place after decades of catering other people's celebrations. It wasn't much. A cozy storefront in downtown Napa with mismatched chairs and tables I'd rescued from yard sales. But it was mine. The crumb trail, I called it. My slice of the American dream after raising Chelsea alone for almost 30 years. "Mom!" she practically squealed, holding out her left hand where a diamond the size of a small planet caught the morning light. Jason proposed last night. I remember dropping the tray of scones I was carrying. I remember hugging her so tight she complained she couldn't breathe. I remember thinking, finally, my girl has found happiness. Jason Reynolds. I'd only met him twice. Tall, impeccably dressed, with the confident stride of someone who's never wondered if there would be enough money for rent. He was a real estate developer from one of Napa Valley's oldest wine families. The Reynolds name was on buildings, charity galas, and occasionally the society pages. "He wants a big wedding," Chelsea gushed, helping me pick up the scattered scones. "His family has connections to everyone who matters in the valley." I nodded, swallowing my first instinct, which was to ask if she was sure, if 6 months of dating was enough time to know. Someone. But Chelsea had always known what she wanted. From the moment she could speak, she'd had plans. And who was I to question her happiness? "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart," I said instead, brushing flour from my apron. "Whatever you need, I'm here." Those words. Those simple maternal words. I had no idea they would become a contract I never meant to sign. The engagement party was Jason's mother's idea. Patricia Reynolds wanted to host it at their family vineyard, 300 acres of prime Napa real estate with a restored Victorian mansion and a ballroom that had been featured in architectural magazines. "It's just a small gathering," Chelsea assured me over coffee one morning. 30 people, tops. "Do you want me to cater it?" I asked, already mentally calculating how I could. "Close the bakery for a day to prepare." Chelsea's eyes widened. "Oh no, Mom, they're bringing in someone from San Francisco. Super exclusive." I felt a pang of something. Disappointment? Hurt? But I pushed it aside. "Well, that makes sense. I'd rather enjoy it as a guest anyway." She didn't meet my eyes. "About that, Patricia thinks it might be nice if you could help out a little. Since you know so much about service and presentation." "Help out?" I repeated. "Just with little things. Maybe your famous mini tarts? The caterers are doing everything else. But Patricia tried one of your tarts when she visited the bakery and hasn't stopped talking about them." Pride overrode my hesitation. Of course, I'd be happy to make some tarts. That was the first request. Small, reasonable. A mother contributing to her daughter's special day. Then came the calls. Could I come early to help arrange flowers? The decorator had a specific vision. Could I help coordinate with the rental company about tablecloths? I knew about these things. Could I please bake 3 more desserts? Just small ones because Patricia wanted options. Each request came with flattery. Each one seemed innocent. Enough on its own. The day of the engagement party, I arrived at the Reynolds estate at 10 a.m., 6 hours before guests were due. I brought the requested desserts, a change of clothes for the actual party, and a gift for the happy couple. A hand-painted serving platter I'd splurged on. Patricia greeted me at the service entrance, not the main door. "Lillian, thank goodness! The florist is having a wow." meltdown about the centerpieces, and the lighting people are all wrong. Chelsea said you'd know what to do. Before I could respond, I was whisked into a whirlwind of crisis management. Flowers needed arranging. Tables needed setting. The caterer had questions about food allergies that somehow became my responsibility to answer. Hours passed. I texted Chelsea, who was getting ready upstairs with her bridesmaids, asking when I should change into my party dress. "Maybe hold off," she replied. "There's still so much to do downstairs." By 4 o'clock, guests began arriving. I was still in my work clothes, black pants and a simple blouse, with an apron thrown over top. My hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and I hadn't had time for makeup. As I arranged the last of my desserts on the display table, I overheard one of Jason's cousins ask, "Is the catering staff all local?" Patricia replied, "Oh, that's Chelsea's mother. She's been so helpful with everything." Not, "This is Lillian, Chelsea's mother." But, "That's Chelsea's mother." Like I was a curiosity, a footnote. And that's when I realized I wasn't a guest at my daughter's engagement party. I was the help. The ballroom of the Reynolds estate glowed with soft amber lighting and the sparkle of crystal. Floral arrangements of white roses and delicate baby's breath crowned each table, their perfume mingling with the aromas of expensive perfumes and the catered dinner being served. A small string quartet played quietly in the corner, their bows creating a gentle soundtrack to the murmur of conversation and laughter. I stood by the dessert table, arranging my homemade tarts and miniature pavlovas that had taken me hours to perfect. My feet ached from standing all day. My hands were raw from washing dishes that weren't being cleared quickly enough. And somewhere deep in my chest, a knot of confusion and hurt had begun to form. "Mom?" Chelsea appeared at my side, radiant in a champagne-colored cocktail dress. Her hair was swept up elegantly, small diamonds glittering at her ears. A gift from Jason, she told me excitedly earlier. "Everything looks amazing. You're a lifesaver." I smiled, trying to focus on her happiness rather than my growing discomfort. "Thanks, honey. I should probably go change now that everything's set up." She glanced at her watch, a nervous habit she'd had since high school. "Could you wait just a bit longer? The speeches are about to start, and I'd hate for you to miss anything while you're changing." "Of course," I said, though my party dress continued to hang unworn in the small staff bathroom down the hall. The speeches began with Jason's father, Robert Reynolds, a distinguished man with silver at his temples, and the confident stance of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. He spoke of legacy, of the Reynolds family's deep roots in Napa Valley, and how Chelsea was a refreshing addition to their lineage. Not once did he mention me or acknowledge that I had raised her alone. Jason spoke next, charming and polished in his tailored suit. He talked about Chelsea's ambition, her eye for beauty, how she fit perfectly into the life he'd always envisioned. His words were like a resume reading, a checklist of qualities he admired. Love, real and messy and enduring, seemed strangely absent. Then it was Chelsea's turn. My heart swelled as she took the microphone, expecting some small acknowledgement of our journey together, the late nights helping with homework, the weekends I'd worked double shifts to afford her dance lessons, the countless small sacrifices that had defined our life together. "I want to thank the Reynolds family for welcoming me so warmly," she began, "especially Patricia, who has been like a second mother to me these past few months." A second mother. The words stung more than they should have. "And I want to thank everyone who helped put this beautiful evening together," she continued, her gaze sweeping over the room but never quite landing on me. That was it. No mention of her actual mother. No recognition of the woman who had spent the day in an apron while guests arrived in cocktail attire. As applause filled the room, Patricia approached me. "Lillian, would you mind checking on the kitchen staff? I think they're falling behind on clearing glasses." I nodded mechanically, too stunned by my daughter's omission to argue. As I pushed through the swinging door to the catering kitchen, I caught my reflection in a stainless steel panel. Who was this woman with tired eyes and flour on her blouse? When had I become invisible? In the kitchen, the actual catering staff, professionals who were being paid for their services, gave me curious looks as I explained Patricia's concerns. "Are you with the event company?" one young server asked. "No," I said quietly. "I'm the mother of the bride." Her eyes widened slightly, confusion evident. "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought—" "It's fine." I cut her off, not wanting her pity. "Just a misunderstanding." When I returned to the ballroom, the formal dinner was being served. I scanned the room for my seat. finally approaching Chelsea, who was holding court at the head table with Jason and his parents. "Chelsea, where am I sitting?" I asked quietly. Her smile faltered for just a moment. "Oh, Mom, I thought you'd be helping in the kitchen during dinner. The caterers said they're short-staffed." The caterers had said no such thing. I knew because I'd just been in the kitchen with them. "I haven't eaten since breakfast," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I'm not part of, the catering staff." Jason's mother leaned over, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Lillian, there's a plate for you in the staff area. I made sure they set aside something nice." The staff area. Not the ballroom with the guests. Not with my daughter. I felt something crack inside me. A small fracture in the foundation of maternal love and sacrifice I'd built my life upon. For the first time, I wondered if I had raised a daughter who valued status more than sincerity, appearance more than appreciation. "I see," was all I could manage to say. Chelsea must have sensed my hurt because she quickly added, "It's just that all the tables are assigned already, Mom, for the place settings and everything." As if I hadn't spent hours that morning arranging those very place settings under Patricia's exacting supervision. I retreated to the kitchen where the catering manager, kind enough to recognize the awkwardness of the situation, insisted I sit down while she fixed me a proper plate. I ate standing up near the dishwashing station, watching through the small window in the door as laughter and conversation flowed in the ballroom. After dinner, as guests mingled with fresh drinks in hand, I finally slipped away to change into my dress, a simple navy blue sheath I'd bought specially for this occasion. By the time I emerged, dessert was being served. My desserts, arranged on the Reynolds fine china. "These are divine," I overheard one guest saying. "Did the caterer make these?" "Oh, Chelsea's mother bakes," Patricia replied, as if discussing a child's hobby rather than my profession. Such a charming little bakery she has downtown. I moved through the crowd, feeling like a ghost at my own daughter's celebration. A few guests who recognized me from the bakery stopped to compliment my desserts, but most simply looked through me, another invisible worker ensuring their evening went smoothly. As the night progressed, I found myself continually pulled into service, fetch more ice, find another bottle of the special reserve wine, help an elderly guest locate the restroom. Each request eroded my presence as a mother, as a guest, as a person worthy of recognition on this significant day. And then came the moment that would change everything. The moment when Chelsea, surrounded by Jason's college friends, called across the room, "Mom, could you clear the dessert table? Jason's aunt says the plates are piling up. I'm not your employee." The words left my mouth before I could stop them, hanging in the air like a discordant note in the quartet's melody. Chelsea's face flushed crimson. Jason stepped closer to her, a protective hand on her lower back, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and annoyance. The guests nearest to us suddenly found their champagne glasses fascinating. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't made a scene. I had simply stated a truth that had been building all day, perhaps for months. Yet the silence that followed felt deafening, as if I'd shouted obscenities rather than expressed a simple boundary. That's when she walked in. Angela Wallace. A woman I'd never met but whose name I'd heard whispered throughout the evening with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Jason's estranged aunt, the black sheep of the Reynolds family, uninvited yet somehow present, clutching a yellow envelope like it contained state secrets. "Maybe now's the right time to tell everyone why this wedding shouldn't happen at all," she announced, her voice carrying across the stunned ballroom. All eyes turned from me to this new disruption. I should have felt relief at the diverted attention, but instead a strange sense of foreboding washed over me. This woman, with her impeccable posture and determined expression, wasn't just creating a distraction. She was about to change the course of the evening, perhaps the course of all our lives. Robert Reynolds recovered first, striding toward Angela with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Angela, what an unexpected surprise. I'm afraid there must have been a mix-up with the invitations." "No mix-up, Robert," Angela replied, her voice steady. "I wasn't invited, and we both know why. But after what I just witnessed, I couldn't stay silent." She turned toward me, and I was startled by the intensity of her gaze. "You're Lillian Monroe, aren't you? Chelsea's mother?" I nodded, confusion replacing my earlier humiliation. "I thought so. We've met before, though you wouldn't remember me. I was using a different name then." Patricia Reynolds stepped forward, her smile brittle. "Angela, this is hardly the time or place for your dramatics. If you have something to discuss with the family, we can arrange a more appropriate setting. Like the family? Meetings I've been excluded from for the past decade, Angela retorted. No, Patricia. Some truths need witnesses. She moved toward me, bypassing Robert's attempt to intercept her. When she reached me, she extended her hand. 6 years ago, you catered an event at New Beginnings Women's Shelter. I was there, staying under the name Marie. You brought extra food when you realized some of us hadn't eaten. You drove me to the bus station afterward. The memory surfaced slowly. A community fundraiser I'd catered at cost. A thin woman with haunted eyes who'd helped me pack up afterward. Our quiet conversation on the drive to the Greyhound station. I'd given her my business card. Told her to call if she ever needed work. I remember, I said softly. You had a bruise on your wrist that you kept trying to hide with your sleeve. Angela nodded, a sad smile crossing her face. You were kind when I needed kindness most. You didn't ask questions, didn't judge. Just treated me like a human being when I'd forgotten what that felt like. Chelsea stepped forward, confusion written across her features. Mom, what is she talking about? You know Jason's aunt? Before I could respond, Angela turned to address the room. For those who don't know me, I'm Angela Wallace, formerly Angela Reynolds. I left this family and changed my name 10 years ago after enduring years of emotional abuse from my then-husband, Gregory Reynolds, Jason's uncle and Robert's brother. A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Gregory Reynolds, a distinguished board member of the Reynolds Family Trust, had always been portrayed as the pinnacle of Napa Valley aristocracy. That's absurd, Robert interjected. Gregory and Angela had a difficult divorce, yes, but these accusations are documented, Angela finished for him, patting the yellow envelope. Police reports, hospital records, sworn statements from household staff who witnessed his rages, all buried by the family's legal team, of course. The Reynolds name had to be protected at all costs. Jason moved forward now, his face a mask of controlled anger. My uncle has nothing to do with my engagement. Whatever family drama you're trying to resurrect, Aunt Angela, it has no place here. Angela's gaze hardened as she looked at her nephew. Doesn't it, Jason? The apple doesn't fall far from the family tree, does it? That's enough, Patricia snapped. Security will escort you out. Not before I finish, Angela replied calmly. When I left, I promised myself I would never interfere with this family again. But then I saw the announcement of your engagement in the Valley Register, Jason. Your smiling face next to Chelsea's. And I remembered another smiling face, Eliza Harlow. Jason's composed facade cracked slightly. You have no right to mention her name. Eliza was Jason's previous fiancée, Angela explained to the room. The engagement ended suddenly 6 weeks before their wedding. The family claimed she got cold feet, that it was a mutual decision. They were very careful to control the narrative. Chelsea was staring at Jason now, confusion evident in her expression. You told me Eliza was just a college girlfriend. She was nothing serious, Jason replied dismissively. Angela is deliberately misrepresenting. I have a sworn affidavit from Eliza, Angela interrupted, pulling a document from her envelope, detailing how Jason isolated her from friends and family, how he monitored her spending, her communications, how he would fly into jealous rages, then shower her with gifts afterward, making her believe she was the problem. The room had gone completely silent. Even the quartet had stopped playing. Lies, Jason hissed. All lies. Angela turned to Chelsea, her expression softening. I don't know you, Chelsea. You seem lovely. Perhaps Jason has changed? But when I walked in here tonight and saw this woman, she gestured toward me, being treated as if her only worth was in her service. I saw myself 10 years ago. I saw Eliza 5 years ago. And I couldn't stay silent. Chelsea looked between Jason, Angela, and me, her expression cycling through confusion, anger, and uncertainty. Jason, what is she talking about? Who is Eliza really? But before Jason could answer, Angela pulled another document from her envelope. There's one more thing everyone should know. Jason's grandfather, Edmund Reynolds, the founder of Reynolds Estates, added a morality clause to his will before he died. A clause I fought for. If any heir to the Reynolds fortune is proven to have engaged in abusive behavior toward a partner, their inheritance is forfeit. Robert Reynolds' face had gone ashen. That clause was removed. No, Robert. You tried to have it removed, but Edmund's final amendment was properly witnessed and notarized. I have the original right here, with Edmund's signature and the court seal. The ballroom erupted in murmurs and whispers. Jason's face had transformed into something I didn't recognize. Cold, calculating, furious. Chelsea stood frozen beside him, her perfect engagement party crumbling around her. And I, still standing by the dessert table in my finally worn navy dress, felt a strange sense of clarity washing over me. The humiliation of the day receded, replaced by an understanding of what truly mattered: dignity, respect, truth. Angela approached me again, lowering her voice. I didn't come here to create chaos, Lillian, but some truths need to be spoken, especially when history threatens to repeat itself. I nodded, finding my voice at last. Thank you for remembering me. How could I forget? You gave me back my humanity when I needed it most. She squeezed my hand gently. Now, I think I've outstayed my welcome. As Angela turned to leave, her mission apparently accomplished, Chelsea suddenly called out, "Wait!" All eyes turned to my daughter, standing tall despite her obvious distress. I want to see that affidavit, and I want to hear from Jason. The whole truth this time. The Reynolds estate had transformed from a celebration venue into a courtroom of sorts. Most guests, sensing the private nature of the unfolding drama, had discreetly departed with murmured congratulations that rang hollow. Those who remained, primarily family members and a few close friends, had moved to the library, a wood-paneled room with leather-bound books and the lingering scent of expensive cigars. I sat alone in a high-backed chair near the fireplace, neither part of the Reynolds family circle, nor among Chelsea's friends who huddled together, whispering and shooting concerned glances toward my daughter. Chelsea sat rigidly on a leather sofa, Jason beside her but not touching. The affidavit from Eliza Harlow lay open in her hands, her eyes moving methodically across each damning page. Angela Wallace had reluctantly agreed to stay at Chelsea's insistence. She stood by the window, silhouetted against the vineyard darkness, a sentinel of uncomfortable truths. This can't be true, Chelsea finally said, her voice barely audible. She looked up at Jason, searching his face. Tell me this isn't true. Jason ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, his composure visibly cracking. Eliza was unstable. You know how some women can be dramatic, always turning things around to make themselves the victim? Some women? Angela's voice cut through the room. Like me, Jason? Was I unstable too when I reported your uncle's abuse? That was different, Robert interjected. Gregory had issues, problems with alcohol. The family acknowledges that now. How convenient, Angela replied. Acknowledge it years later, when it can't hurt the family reputation anymore. Chelsea set the affidavit aside, her hands trembling slightly. There are text messages documented here, Jason. Things you wrote to her. Threats, accusations. She looked up, eyes glistening. They sound exactly like what you said to me last month when I met my old college friend for coffee. Word for word. A chill ran through me. This was the first I'd heard of any controlling behavior from Jason toward Chelsea. What else had I missed while being so focused on my daughter's apparent happiness? Chelsea, baby, you're overreacting, Jason said, reaching for her hand. Every relationship has rough patches. I get jealous sometimes. Because I love you so much. That's normal. Is it normal to track her location through her phone? Angela asked quietly. That's what you did with Eliza, according to her statement. Chelsea's head snapped up. How did you know he tracks my location? I didn't, Angela replied. But thank you for confirming the pattern continues. A heavy silence fell over the room. Patricia Reynolds finally spoke, her voice tight with controlled fury. This is ridiculous. We're allowing this woman, she gestured dismissively toward Angela, to destroy a beautiful relationship with ancient history and exaggerations. Then explain why Chelsea's mother was treated like hired help at her own daughter's engagement party. Angela countered. Explain the subtle undermining, the isolation from family. That's already beginning. All eyes turned to me, and I felt a flush creep up my neck. I hadn't wanted to be the center of this drama. I had only wanted to be recognized as Chelsea's mother, to be treated with basic dignity. Mom? Chelsea's voice was small, younger somehow. Is that how you felt today? Like hired help? The question hung in the air between us. In that moment, I had a choice to minimize my feelings to protect her, as I had done countless times throughout her life, or to speak my truth, painful as it might be. Yes, I said simply. From the moment I arrived, I was directed to the service entrance. I was asked to work all day. I wasn't given a place setting at dinner. I was referred to as the help, or Chelsea's mother who bakes, rather than by my name. I took a deep breath. And when you called across the room for me to clear dishes, it felt like the final confirmation that I wasn't here as your mother. I was here as staff. Chelsea's face crumpled. I never meant. She stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. You never meant for it to be so obvious, Angela finished for her. But that's how it starts, Chelsea. Small humiliations, subtle separations from the people who love you most, creating dependency while eroding self-worth. Jason stood abruptly. This is absurd. I've never laid a hand on Chelsea. I've never even raised my voice to her. You're painting me as some kind of monster based on the delusions of a jilted ex and the paranoia of an estranged aunt. And what about how your family treated Lillian today? Angela pressed. Was that a delusion too? Jason's face hardened. My mother was trying to make her feel included, giving her a role that suited her background. Not everyone is comfortable in our social circles. The words stung, revealing the truth behind the day's charade. In their eyes, I would never be good enough. My years of hard work, my successful small business, my sacrifices for Chelsea, none of it measured up to their definition of worth. Suited my background? I repeated, finding strength in my indignation. I own a business. I raised a daughter alone while putting myself through culinary school. I'm not ashamed of who I am or what I do. Chelsea was looking between Jason and me, her expression torn. Jason, how could you think that way about my mother? I don't, he insisted. This is being blown. Completely out of proportion. Your mother offered to help. We accepted. End of story. That's not what happened, I countered, my voice steady. I was told my desserts were requested. Then I was asked to come early to help with just a few things. Before I knew it, I was working the entire event while being treated as if I should be grateful for the opportunity to serve your family. Patricia. Reynolds stood, straightening her silk blouse with a practiced motion. This has become absurdly theatrical. An engagement party has turned into some sort of family tribunal because Chelsea's mother felt slighted over being asked to help with dessert. It wasn't just dessert, Chelsea said quietly, surprising me with her defense. Mom was working all day. I saw it, but I didn't want to make a scene. I thought she was happy to help. I was happy to help, I clarified. I wasn't happy to be invisible, to be treated as less than, to be your servant, rather than your mother on one of the most important days of your life. The room fell silent again. Outside, through the large windows, the vineyard's security lights illuminated rows of carefully tended grapevines, stretching into the darkness like the roots of the Reynolds family's influence, deep, extensive, and difficult to escape once entangled. Robert Reynolds cleared his throat. I believe we've all had enough drama for one evening. Angela, you've made your point. Now I'll ask you to leave my property before I'm forced to have you removed. Angela didn't flinch. The affidavit stays with Chelsea, and the amendment to Edmund's will stays with the family lawyer, who, by the way, has instructions to file it with the court if anything happens to me. The threat was clear, and Robert's face darkened with barely contained rage. Chelsea stood suddenly. I need time to think about all of this. She looked at Jason, her expression unreadable. I'm going home tonight, alone. Chelsea, don't be ridiculous, Jason began, reaching for her arm. She stepped back. Don't. Not right now. She turned to me, her eyes filled with confusion and remorse. Mom, can we talk? Just us? For the first time that day, perhaps for the first time in months, my daughter was seeing me. Really seeing me. Not as a convenient resource to be used, but as her mother. A person with feelings and dignity. Of course, I said softly. Always. The drive back to my small house on the outskirts of downtown Napa unfolded in weighted silence. Chelsea sat in the passenger seat of my aging Honda, her elegant dress a stark contrast to the car's worn interior. The diamond on her finger caught the intermittent glow of passing streetlights, winking like a cold star. I'd offered to call her an Uber, thinking she might prefer the sleek anonymity of a hired car, but she'd shaken her head. I want to go with you, she'd said, and something in her voice, a vulnerability I hadn't heard in years, had made my heart ache. Now, as we pulled into my driveway, the porch light I'd left on created a small pool of welcome. My cottage was modest. 2 bedrooms, a small yard where I grew herbs for the bakery, a porch swing I'd rescued from a neighbor's trash, and lovingly restored. Nothing like the Reynolds estate with its manicured perfection, but it had been our home for most of Chelsea's life. I haven't been here in months, Chelsea said softly as we walked up the path. It wasn't an accusation, just a realization. And the sadness in her voice told me she understood what that meant as much as I did. Inside, everything was just as I'd left it that morning, a coffee mug in the sink, a stack of baking magazines on the counter, Chelsea's high school graduation photo still prominently displayed on the wall, evidence of a life that had continued in her absence, simple and unadorned. Tea? I offered, falling back on the ritual that had comforted us through 1,000 conversations over the years. Boyfriend troubles, college applications, the grief when her grandmother passed. Chelsea nodded, slipping off her heels and curling into the corner of my sofa, suddenly looking very young again. I busied myself in the kitchen, giving us both a moment to gather our thoughts. The familiar routine of filling the kettle, selecting tea bags, arranging cookies on a plate, motions my hands could perform without conscious direction, allowed my mind to process the evening's events. When I returned to the living room with our steaming mugs, Chelsea had removed her engagement ring. It sat on the coffee table, looking somehow smaller away from the glittering context of the Reynolds ballroom. "I don't know who I am anymore, Mom," she said as I handed her the tea. Her voice cracked slightly. "When did I become someone who treats her own mother? Like the help?" I finished gently, settling beside her. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so ashamed. I kept telling myself it was just for the party, that it wasn't a big deal to ask you to help out. But it wasn't just helping, was it? It was erasing you, making you invisible." The admission hung between us, honest and painful. I took a slow sip of tea, choosing my words carefully. "When did things change with Jason? When did his family start influencing how you saw me?" Chelsea stared into her mug. It was so gradual. At first, it was just comments. Subtle things. Patricia asking if your bakery was just a hobby or if I was embarrassed by your catering background. Jason suggesting that my drive and ambition must have come from my father's side since you'd settled for a small business. Each example was a small knife twist. I'd always believed Chelsea was proud of me, of what I'd accomplished as a single mother with limited resources. "And you started to see me through their eyes," I said. Not as an accusation, but as a sad observation. "I wanted to belong," she whispered. "The Reynolds name opens doors in Napa that I never even knew existed. Art gallery openings, charity board positions, connections to people who could advance my career. It felt like everything I'd ever worked for was suddenly within reach. At the cost of who you really are, who we are." She set down her mug, her hands trembling slightly. "I told myself it was worth it, that you'd understand because you've always wanted the best for me. That a little social adjustment was a small price to pay." "Social adjustment," I repeated, the euphemism hanging bitter in the air between us. "It sounds terrible when I say it out loud." Chelsea brushed away fresh tears. "But that's how they framed it. Patricia would say things like, 'We just need to polish Chelsea a bit, smooth those rough edges.' And I let them. I let them make me believe that my background, your hard work, everything you taught me, was something to overcome rather than something to be proud of." I reached for her hand, finding it cold despite the warm mug she'd been holding. "Chelsea, I never wanted you to be limited by our circumstances. I wanted you to go further, reach higher than I could, but not by becoming someone else, not by being ashamed of where you came from." "I wasn't ashamed," she protested weakly, then stopped herself. "No, that's not true. I was. When Patricia suggested having you help with the party instead of attending as a guest, I should have been outraged. Instead, I thought it made sense, that you'd be more comfortable with a role to play." The admission hurt, but the honesty behind it was necessary. For too long, we'd been operating in a space of unspoken tensions and shifting expectations. "And Jason," I asked, "the things Angela said about controlling behavior, about his previous fiancé, did any of that ring true?" Chelsea's gaze drifted to the engagement ring on the table, its diamond catching the soft lamplight. "He checks my location, says it's because he worries about me. He questions who I have lunch with, especially male colleagues. Once he showed up at a business dinner I was having with my boss, saying he happened to be in the neighborhood. My stomach tightened. These were warning signs I should have seen, should have asked about. Has he ever been physical? Grabbed you, pushed you?" "No," she said quickly. "Nothing like that. It's more subtle. He'll get cold, distant if I do something he doesn't approve of. He'll make comments about my clothes, my friends. And then, when I adjust to please him, he's loving again. Generous. It feels like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, trying to be the version of myself he wants that day. The pattern was all too familiar. The gradual isolation, the erosion of self-worth, the intermittent reinforcement that kept her hoping things would improve. It was the same cycle that had trapped me in my brief marriage to Chelsea's father before I'd found the strength to leave. The engagement party, Chelsea continued, was supposed to be perfect, a statement that I belonged in their world. But when you stood up for yourself, when you said you weren't my employee, it was like seeing myself clearly for the first time in months. I've been so focused on fitting into the Reynolds family that I forgot to honor my own. Outside, a light rain had begun to fall, tapping against the windows with gentle persistence. The sound transported me back to countless rainy nights when Chelsea was small, when we'd build blanket forts in this very living room and I'd read her stories until she fell asleep. Simple moments of unconditional love that formed the foundation of who we were together. What happens now? I asked softly. Chelsea looked at the ring again, then back at me. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe Jason can change, that the things Angela revealed were exaggerations or misunderstandings. But another part knows that's exactly what victims tell themselves. That's what keeps the cycle going. You don't have to decide everything tonight, I told her. Give yourself time to think, to feel, to remember who you are outside of this relationship. She nodded, leaning her head against my shoulder like she used to do as a child. I'm sorry, Mom. So sorry for how I treated you today, for how I've been treating you for months. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. I know, sweetheart. I know. We sat like that for a long while. The rain, creating a cocoon of white noise around us. No need for more words. Just the reconnection of mother and daughter finding their way back to each other through the ruins of a carefully constructed facade. Later, as I made up the guest bed with fresh sheets, Chelsea's childhood bedroom having been converted to a home office years ago, I found myself reflecting on Angela Wallace's unexpected intervention. Her courage had created a rupture in the evening, yes, but perhaps it was a necessary breaking to prevent a deeper fracture in the future. Sometimes the most painful truths are also the most liberating. Chelsea appeared in the doorway, wearing an old t-shirt of mine and looking younger than her 28 years. Mom, can I ask you something? I smoothed the last wrinkle from the bedspread. Of course. How did you do it? Raise me alone, build your business, keep going when things were hard, all without becoming bitter or losing yourself? The question caught me off guard, simple yet profound. I don't know that I did it perfectly, I admitted. There were plenty of nights I cried after you were asleep, plenty of moments I questioned every decision. But I guess I always believed that dignity isn't something other people can give you or take away. It comes from living in alignment with your own values, even when that's difficult. She nodded slowly, absorbing my words. I think I forgot that somewhere along the way, but I'm going to remember now. As she turned to go to bed, she paused, looking back at me with clear eyes. The Reynolds might have their name on buildings and wine labels, but you, Lillian Monroe, have your name on me, on who I really am, and that's worth more than all their vineyards combined. Morning arrived with gentle persistence, sunlight filtering through the kitchen curtains as I moved quietly around the familiar space, preparing breakfast. The events of the previous night felt simultaneously distant and immediate, like the lingering fragments of a particularly vivid dream. I'd risen early, a lifetime habit from years of opening the bakery at dawn. Though the crumb trail was closed on Sundays, my body clock remained faithful to its routine. I found comfort in the ritual of measuring coffee grounds, whisking eggs, the mindful precision of slicing fresh strawberries from the farmer's market. Chelsea emerged just as I was setting the table, her hair twisted in a messy bun, eyes still heavy with sleep and yesterday's emotions. She'd borrowed more of my clothes, worn jeans and a faded blue sweater that had once been hers in high school. The transformation from the polished woman in last night's cocktail dress was striking. I forgot how good morning smells at your house, she said, accepting the mug of coffee I offered. She inhaled deeply, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. No one makes coffee like you do. Secret ingredient is cinnamon, I replied, the familiar exchange warming me more than the mug in my hands. It had been our morning joke since Chelsea was 16 and decided she was grown up enough for coffee. We settled at the small kitchen table by the window that overlooked my herb garden. Outside, the world was washed clean by last night's rain, droplets still clinging to leaves and petals like tiny prisms. Jason called, Chelsea said after her first sip, her gaze fixed on the garden. 7 times, and texted 23 messages. I set my fork down carefully. What did he say? Everything you'd expect. That his aunt is mentally unstable. That his ex-fiancée was lying. That he loves me more than anything and can't understand why I'd let manipulative people come between us. She picked at her eggs, pushing them around the plate. He wants me home by noon. Says we need to present a united front to his family. And what do you want? I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in my head at the controlling nature of his messages. Chelsea looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I want to remember who I was before I started measuring my worth through the Reynolds family's approval. I want to feel like myself again. I nodded, understanding completely. That takes time and space, which is exactly what Jason doesn't want to give me. She set her phone on the table, screen up. As if on cue, it lit up with another incoming call, Jason's name and photo appearing on the display. Chelsea watched it ring until the call went to voicemail, her expression a complex mixture of longing and resolve. I keep thinking about what Angela said, she continued, about patterns, about history repeating itself. She twisted a strand of hair around her finger, a nervous habit from childhood. Did I ever tell you about the night Jason proposed? I shook my head. It had struck me as odd at the time that I'd heard about the proposal after the fact, rather than being called in the moment with excitement as I might have expected. We were at a dinner with his parents and some business associates. I'd just landed the marketing account for Silverado Winery, a huge win for my firm. I was so excited to share the news. She paused, her gaze distant with memory. But when I started telling everyone, Jason interrupted, said he had an announcement that would overshadow my little work victory. My heart sank, recognizing the dismissive tactic for what it was, a deliberate diminishment, a way to ensure the spotlight remained firmly in his control. He proposed right there, in front of everyone. What could I say but yes? Everyone was watching, applauding. His mother had tears in her eyes. Chelsea's voice grew quieter. Later that night, when we were alone, I tried to tell him it hurt that he'd interrupted my career news. He said I was being ungrateful, that any woman would be thrilled with such a romantic public proposal. And you believed him? I said softly. It wasn't a question. I convinced myself he was right, that I was overreacting. That's the pattern, isn't it? You start to doubt your own feelings, your own perception of events. The realization in her voice was painful, but necessary. The first step toward breaking free from the subtle manipulation that had become her normal. We ate in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of shared breakfast creating a bubble of security around us. Outside, birds visited the feeder hanging from my porch eave, their cheerful activity a reminder that life continues its simple patterns, regardless of human drama. I need to go to the apartment today, Chelsea said eventually. Get some clothes, my laptop for work tomorrow. The apartment she shared with Jason in one of Napa's upscale new developments, paid for primarily by his family as an engagement gift. Would you like me to come with you? I offered, already anticipating her resistance. To my surprise, she nodded. Actually, yes. I'm not sure I trust myself to go alone. Jason can be very persuasive when he wants to be. The admission revealed both self-awareness and vulnerability, a combination that made me prouder of her than any accomplishment she'd ever achieved. Recognizing one's weaknesses takes more strength than pretending to have none. We'll go together, I said firmly. Get what you need and leave. No extended conversations, no getting pulled into debates or justifications. Like ripping off a bandage, Chelsea agreed with a weak smile. As we cleared the breakfast dishes, working in the synchronized rhythm that comes from years of shared domesticity. Chelsea paused, soap suds clinging to her hands. Mom, that affidavit from Eliza Harlow, it mentioned something I can't stop thinking about. I waited, sensing the importance of whatever she was about to share. It said that after they broke up, Jason spread rumors about her to mutual friends, made sure she was excluded from social events, essentially erased her from their circle. She rinsed a plate with deliberate focus. Last night, Patricia mentioned something about having lunch with the symphony board next week to discuss damage control regarding Angela's appearance at the party. The implication was clear. The Reynolds family machine was already at work, crafting the narrative that would protect their reputation at all costs. They'll try to discredit her, I said. Make her seem unstable or vindictive. And they might come after you too, Chelsea added, her voice tight with worry. The disgruntled mother who caused a scene at her daughter's engagement party because she wasn't treated like royalty. The characterization stung, but I recognized its strategic effectiveness. In a town like Napa, where old money and new businesses created a complex social ecosystem. Reputation was currency, and the Reynolds family had been making deposits for generations. Let them try, I said with more confidence than I felt. I have nothing to be ashamed of. Chelsea turned to me, her expression suddenly fierce. I won't let them hurt you, Mom. I've already failed you once by letting them treat you like you were beneath them. I won't fail you again. Her, protective instinct, so long dormant in our relationship, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. For years, I had been the protector, the shield between Chelsea and life's harsher realities. The role reversal was both painful and beautiful, evidence that despite recent missteps, I had raised a daughter with a strong moral compass. We'll protect each other, I said, squeezing her soapy hand with mine. That's what family does. As we finished the dishes, my phone chimed with a text message. I dried my hands and checked the screen, surprised to see an unfamiliar number. Lillian, it's Angela Wallace. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from the business card you gave me years ago. Could we meet today? I think we should talk before the Reynolds family launches their campaign. Coffee at Ritual Roasters at 2 p.m.? I showed Chelsea the message. She read it twice, then nodded slowly. You should go. Angela risked a lot coming forward last night, and I think there's more to her story than what she shared at the party. What about going to your apartment? We'll do that first, then you can meet Angela while I sort through some things here. Chelsea's expression grew. Determined. I need to start figuring out what my life looks like when I walk away from the Reynolds family. And from Jason. The tentative correction, if to when, didn't escape my notice. Small steps, I reminded myself. Breaking free from manipulation and control is rarely a clean, decisive break. It's a process, full of doubt and second-guessing. One day at a time, I said, echoing the advice my own mother had given me when I'd finally left Chelsea's father after years of emotional abandonment and broken promises. That's all any of us can manage. Chelsea's phone buzzed again on the table. Jason, undoubtedly, growing increasingly desperate for a response. She glanced at it, then deliberately turned it face down. One day at a time, she repeated, as if testing the words, weight, and finding them substantial enough to build upon. Starting today, Ritual Roasters was tucked into a converted warehouse space on the less tourist-heavy side of Napa, catering to locals who preferred their coffee strong and their atmosphere unpretentious. I arrived 15 minutes early, a lifetime habit that Chelsea used to tease me about. Mom's early to being early, she'd say with an eye roll. The memory brought a small smile to my face as I selected a quiet table in the corner, positioned to see both the entrance and the street beyond. The morning's expedition to Chelsea's shared apartment with Jason had gone better than expected. We'd arrived to find him absent, at an emergency family meeting, according to the terse note left on the kitchen counter. Chelsea had moved with quiet efficiency, packing essentials into 2 suitcases, clothes, toiletries, important documents, and a few sentimental items that were hers alone. The rest, the expensive artwork Jason had selected, the designer furniture, the matched crystal that Patricia had given them as an apartment warming gift, she left behind without a second glance. None of it ever felt like mine anyway, she'd said as, we'd closed the door behind us. It always felt like I was living in a Reynolds family display home. The relief on her face as we'd driven away had been confirmation enough that she was making the right choice, at least for now. Angela Wallace arrived precisely at 2, dressed in a simple linen dress and flat sandals that spoke of confidence without needing to announce itself. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a low ponytail, her only jewelry a pair of small pearl earrings. She carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had fought hard battles and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. Lillian, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for meeting me. I realize after last night's drama, you might have preferred never to hear the name Reynolds again. I smiled, gesturing to the chair across from me. Given that my daughter was, until recently, engaged to one, I don't think that's an option. Was? Angela raised an eyebrow as she settled into her seat. That's quicker than I expected. Let's say it's a work in progress, I replied, not wanting to speak for Chelsea. She's staying with me for now, taking time to think. A server approached and we both ordered. Black coffee for Angela, a latte for me. When we were alone again, Angela leaned forward slightly. I didn't plan what happened last night, she began. I've kept my distance from the Reynolds family for years, for my own sanity as much as anything else. But when I saw the engagement announcement in the paper, with Jason's smiling face, she trailed off, her expression darkening. momentarily. I couldn't stay silent. Not again. Again? I prompted gently. Angela's eyes met mine, steady and clear. 5 years ago, when Jason was engaged to Eliza Harlow, I received a call from her. She'd found my name in some old family papers and tracked me down. She was desperate, frightened. Said Jason had become increasingly controlling, that she was thinking of breaking the engagement, but was afraid of what he might do. Our coffee arrived, creating a momentary pause in the conversation. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, anchoring myself against the growing unease her words created. I encouraged her to leave, Angela continued after the server departed. Offered her a place to stay, money if she needed it. She thanked me, but said she would handle it herself. A shadow passed across her face. 2 weeks later, she broke the engagement. A week after that, she lost her job at a prestigious design firm where Robert Reynolds happened to sit on the board. Then her apartment building suddenly sold to new owners who doubled the rent. Her car was vandalized twice in 1 month. The Reynolds machine in action, I murmured. Angela nodded grimly. By the time she contacted me again, she'd already accepted a job offer in Chicago. Said she couldn't fight them. They had too much power, too many connections. But she did sign that affidavit, had it notarized and left it with me just in case. Her parting words were, "I hope he never does this to anyone else. But if he does, maybe this will help them." I took a slow sip of my latte, processing the implications. So when you saw Chelsea with Jason, I felt sick, Angela admitted. Like watching history preparing to repeat itself. I tried calling the bakery first, thinking I might be able to warn you privately. But then I saw the engagement party announcement, and I knew time was running short. What do you think they'll do now? I asked, thinking of Chelsea, of my small business, of our quiet life, that had suddenly collided with a family accustomed to wielding power like a weapon. They're already doing it, Angela replied, pulling her phone from her purse and sliding it across the table to me. On the screen was a social media post from the Reynolds Family Vineyards official account. The Reynolds family regrets to announce that last night's celebration was marred by an unfortunate incident involving an estranged family member with a history of mental health challenges. We ask for privacy as we support our son Jason and his fiancée Chelsea during this difficult time. My stomach tightened. They're framing it as if nothing's changed, as if Chelsea hasn't left. Standard operating procedure, Angela said with a grim nod. Control the narrative, discredit the opposition, project an image of unity even when it's crumbling from within. She took back her phone. But there's more. Robert has already called an emergency meeting with the Chamber of Commerce Board, on which he sits, naturally. 3 guesses what the topic might be. The implication was clear. My bakery, the Crumb Trail, was a chamber member. My business depended on local support, on catering contracts, on the goodwill of the community. If the Reynolds family decided to make me a target, they wouldn't, I said, but without conviction. They would, Angela countered firmly. They've done it before. When my divorce from Gregory was finalized, I tried to keep my small art gallery open in downtown Napa. Within 3 months, my lease was terminated. My loan application for a new space was mysteriously denied, and several major clients canceled their standing orders. She reached across the table, her hand covering mine briefly. I'm not telling you this to frighten you, Lillian. I'm telling you because forewarned is forearmed. The Reynolds family believes they own this valley, and in many ways, they do. But they don't own the truth. And the truth is our only weapon, I finished for her, understanding dawning with cold clarity. Angela smiled, a fierce expression that transformed her refined features into something formidable. Not our only weapon. We also have that morality clause in Edmund Reynolds' will, the one that could cost Jason his inheritance if his abusive behavior is proven. And we have Eliza's affidavit. And now we have your experience and Chelsea's testimony. Chelsea hasn't decided what she wants to do yet, I cautioned. This is all very fresh for her. Of course, Angela acknowledged. And I would never pressure her. But she should know all her options before the Reynolds machine kicks into high gear with its particular blend of gaslighting and intimidation. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text from Chelsea. Mom, Patricia just showed up at the house. Says she needs to talk to me. What should I do? I showed the message to Angela, whose expression hardened. They're moving faster than I expected. Patricia will try to bring Chelsea back into the fold. Promise her anything. Make Jason seem like the victim of misunderstandings. I typed quickly. I'm on my way. Don't agree to anything. Don't sign anything. Remember what we talked about this morning. Angela and I left the coffee shop together, an unspoken alliance formed in the face of a common adversary. As we reached the parking lot, she paused, fixing me with an intent gaze. Whatever happens, Lillian, know this. Standing up to them last night was the right thing to do. Dignity isn't something they can take from you, only something you can surrender. And you didn't. I nodded, grateful for her understanding and support. Neither did you all those years ago, and neither will Chelsea, if I have anything to say about it. As I drove home, my mind raced with contingency plans. The bakery might suffer if the Reynolds family decided to make an example of me, but I'd built it from nothing once. I could do it again if necessary. What mattered now was protecting Chelsea from making decisions based on fear or manipulation. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Patricia Reynolds' sleek Mercedes parked at the curb, its presence as incongruous on my modest street as a peacock in a chicken coop. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and prepared to face whatever came next. Inside, Chelsea and Patricia sat at my kitchen table, an untouched pot of tea between them. The contrast between them was striking. Patricia perfectly coiffed in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than a month of my mortgage payments. Chelsea in borrowed jeans and a simple t-shirt, her face free of makeup and set in determined lines. "Mom," Chelsea said, standing as I entered. The relief in her voice was palpable. Patricia was just leaving. Patricia's practiced smile didn't reach her eyes. "Lillian, how convenient that you've returned." Chelsea and I were having a private conversation about family matters. "My mother is my family," Chelsea replied before I could speak. "Anything you have to say can be said in front of her." Patricia's smile tightened fractionally. "Of course. I was simply explaining to Chelsea that Jason is devastated by this misunderstanding. He loves her deeply and wants to make things right." "By posting misleading statements on social media?" I asked, pulling out my phone and displaying the Reynolds Vineyards post Angela had shown me. "By making it seem like nothing's changed when Chelsea has clearly stepped back from the engagement?" Chelsea's eyes widened as she read the post. "They had no right to speak for me." "It's standard crisis management," Patricia dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. "The family has a public image to maintain. Surely you understand that, Chelsea, given your marketing background." "What I understand," Chelsea said slowly, "is that you're more concerned with appearances than with whether your son might be following in his uncle's abusive footsteps." Patricia's composure slipped for just a moment, a flash of genuine anger breaking through the polished veneer. "Angela Wallace is a troubled woman with a vendetta against this family. That affidavit is probably forged. And as for how you were treated at the engagement party, Lillian," she turned to me, her tone patronizing, "we were simply trying to make you feel useful in an environment that was clearly outside your comfort zone." The calculated insult hung in the air between us. A month ago, perhaps even a week ago, it might have landed as intended, making me question my own worth, my own place. But standing in my kitchen, in the home I'd built and maintained through years of hard work, her words seemed small and mean-spirited rather than wounding. "I think you should leave now," I said, calmly. "Chelsea will contact Jason when she's ready to talk, not before." Patricia stood, gathering her designer handbag with deliberate movements. "You're making a grave mistake, both of you. The Reynolds family has been generous, welcoming Chelsea as one of our own despite her background. That generosity can be withdrawn as easily as it was offered." "Is that a threat?" Chelsea asked, her voice steady. Patricia's smile returned, cold and practiced. "Simply a reality check, dear. Think carefully about what you're throwing away. Not everyone gets a second chance at the life we were offering you." After she left, Chelsea sank back into her chair, trembling slightly. "Is it bad that for a moment, just a moment, I considered going back just to avoid all this drama?" I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. "No, it's human. Choosing the harder right path over the easier wrong one always comes with doubt." She squeezed my hand. "I'm not going back. Not after that display." Her expression hardened with newfound resolve. "But I'm also not going to hide and let them control the narrative. Not anymore. 3 months can change everything, or reveal what was always there beneath the eye surface." It was a crisp September evening, and the crumb trail buzzed with warm conversation and laughter. The bakery had been transformed for the night. String lights hung from the ceiling, creating a constellation effect against the exposed brick walls. Tables had been pushed to the perimeter to create an open space in the center, where people gathered in small clusters, wine glasses in hand, sampling the array of desserts arranged on vintage cake stands. "Your mom's rosemary olive oil cake is incredible," said Marcus, the food editor for the Napa Valley Register, as he helped himself to a second slice. "I've had versions at five-star restaurants that don't come close to this balance of flavors." Chelsea, elegant in a simple black dress that she'd picked out herself, not a designer, label in sight, smiled with genuine pride. "Wait until you try her lavender honey madeleines. They're what convinced Silverado Winery to partner with us for their tasting room redesign." The "us" wasn't just a figure of speech. In the 3 months since the disastrous engagement party, Chelsea had gradually moved from staying in my guest room to becoming my business partner. Her marketing expertise had proved invaluable as we weathered the storm the Reynolds family had predictably unleashed. First came the whispers that I had manipulated my daughter into breaking her engagement, that Angela Wallace was mentally unstable, that we were conspiring to extort money from the Reynolds fortune. Then came the more tangible retaliations. 3 major catering contracts mysteriously canceled within a week, a health inspector showing up 4 times in a month with anonymous complaints, and a sudden issue with our lease that required expensive legal assistance to resolve. What the Reynolds family hadn't anticipated was the community's response. For every contract we lost, 2 smaller ones appeared. Local business owners, many of whom had their own stories of Reynolds' intimidation over the IO. Years rallied around us. And when word got out that Chelsea, despite her broken engagement, had refused to sign a confidentiality agreement in exchange for what Patricia had called a generous settlement, public curiosity turned to support. Angela Wallace, now a regular presence in our lives, moved through the crowded bakery with easy grace, stopping to chat with guests. Her silver hair caught the light as she laughed at something Eliza Harlow said. Yes, Eliza herself had flown in from Chicago for tonight's event after Chelsea had reached out to her directly, creating an alliance that the Reynolds family had never anticipated. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see Mayor Garcia entering with his wife. He caught my eye and raised his glass in salute. His presence tonight was a calculated political statement, a public acknowledgement that the Reynolds family's influence in Napa, while still significant, was no longer absolute. "Looks like we've got a full house," said a warm voice beside me. James Chen, my new neighbor who had moved in 2 months ago, handed me a glass of sparkling water. His smile, genuine and unassuming, had become one of the unexpected bright spots in this season of upheaval. A widowed professor of culinary history at the community college, he'd first come into the bakery looking for traditional mooncakes to demonstrate to his students. He'd returned the next day to tell me mine were the closest to his grandmother's recipe he'd ever tasted. "More than I expected," I admitted, taking a grateful sip. When Chelsea suggested this rebrand launch party, I thought we'd have 20 people, tops. "Never underestimate the power of good food and a good story," James replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "And speaking of stories, I think it's almost time for the big reveal, isn't it?" I nodded, a flutter of nerves and excitement rising in my chest. Tonight wasn't just a social gathering. It was the official launch of our expanded business, Monroe and Daughter Bakery and Catering. The sign, currently covered with a cloth outside, would be unveiled at the stroke of 8. Chelsea appeared at my elbow, her expression a mix of excitement and barely contained news. "Mom, Marcus wants to feature us in next month's local flavor column, a full spread. And guess what? Silverado just confirmed they want us as the exclusive dessert provider for their wine club events next year." I hugged her, marveling at how far we'd come from that humiliating night at the Reynolds estate. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. None of it would have happened without you standing up for yourself that night," she said, her voice dropping to ensure our privacy amidst the crowded room. I keep thinking about how close I came to losing myself in Jason's world, in the Reynolds family's expectations. "You found your way back," I said simply. "That's what matters." The sound of a spoon tapping against a glass drew our attention. Angela stood in the center of the room, commanding the space with quiet authority. "If I could have everyone's attention for a moment," she began, her voice carrying easily through the now hushed bakery. "We're here tonight to celebrate not just a business rebranding, but a reclamation of dignity and purpose." She gestured toward Chelsea and me, inviting us to join her. As we moved through the crowd, I caught sight of James watching me with warm appreciation and felt a blush rise to my cheeks. At 52, I wasn't looking for romance, but I wasn't closed to the possibility either, especially with someone who saw me clearly for who I was. 3 months ago, Angela continued once we stood beside her. I witnessed something remarkable. A woman who refused to be invisible, who stood her ground and simply said, "I'm not your employee." That moment of quiet dignity changed the course of many lives, including my own. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. The story of the engagement party had spread throughout Napa, growing and evolving with each telling, but the essential truth remained intact. I had spoken up when silence would have been easier. Lillian Monroe has been feeding this community for decades, first through her catering business, then through this bakery. She's nourished us with more than just food. She's shown us what courage looks like when it's baked into daily life. Angela raised her glass. And now, with her daughter Chelsea as her partner, Monroe and daughter begins a new chapter. Chelsea stepped forward, her confidence evident in her straight posture and clear gaze. My mother taught me that true worth isn't measured by the size of your diamond or the exclusivity of your address. It's measured by how you treat people, especially when no one important is watching. She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Unfortunately for the Reynolds family, someone important was watching the night of my engagement party. Everyone in this room is important. Every customer who walks through our door is important. That's the foundation of our rebrand and our lives moving forward. Applause filled the bakery, genuine and enthusiastic. As it died down, I found myself stepping forward, suddenly compelled to add my own voice to the moment. When I said, "I'm not your employee," that night, I was speaking to more than just my daughter. I began, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I was speaking to every person who has ever made me feel small because I work with my hands, because I serve others, because my business doesn't have a fancy address or corporate backing. The room had gone completely still, every face turned toward me. For 30 years, I thought love meant service. But that night, in a ballroom full of linen and lies, I remembered something more powerful. Love doesn't ask you to shrink. It asks you to stand. I looked at Chelsea, at Angela, at James, at the community that had rallied around us. And I did. We all did. As the clock struck 8, Chelsea took my hand and led me outside to where the covered sign hung above the bakery's entrance. The small crowd followed, spilling onto the sidewalk in anticipation. With a nod from Chelsea, I pulled the cord, revealing the new sign illuminated by soft spotlights. Monroe and Daughter Bakery. Catering. Community where dignity is always on the menu. Cheers erupted, accompanied by applause and a few emotional sniffles. Chelsea wrapped her arm around my waist, and I leaned into her embrace, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought us here. Later that night, after the last guest had departed and Chelsea had gone home to her new apartment, a modest one-bedroom she'd chosen and furnished herself, I sat on my porch swing, savoring the quiet and the lingering satisfaction of the evening. My phone buzzed with a text. It was a photo from Chelsea, the framed article Angela had written for the Napa Valley Independent about emotional abuse and coercive control, featuring both her story and Eliza's experiences with the Reynolds men. The piece had gone viral beyond our small valley, sparking conversations and awareness across the country. Below the photo, Chelsea had written, "Still my favorite thing on my wall. Love you, Mom. So proud of us." I smiled, typing back, "Love you too. See you at the bakery in the morning. Your turn to bring coffee." As I set my phone aside, I caught sight of a car slowly driving past my house, a black luxury sedan with tinted windows. It could have been anyone, but something in me knew it was a Reynolds family member, perhaps Jason himself, surveying what he had lost. The car continued down the street without stopping, disappearing around the corner. I didn't feel fear or anger, just a calm certainty that whatever attempts they might make to reassert control or importance in our lives would fail. Chelsea and I had rediscovered our worth, independent of their approval or connections. And in doing so, we had found something the Reynolds family, for all their wealth and influence, seemed to lack: authentic happiness. The night air carried the scent of my herb garden and the distant notes of someone playing piano a few houses down. Simple pleasures in a simple neighborhood. Not grand or exclusive or impressive by Reynolds standards, perhaps, but genuine. Mine. I pushed the swing gently with my foot, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The future stretched before me, not perfect or guaranteed, but filled with possibilities I was finally ready to embrace. My bakery, my daughter, perhaps even a new relationship, given the way James had asked if he could call me tomorrow. For 30 years, I had defined myself primarily as Chelsea's mother, as a provider, as someone who existed in relation to others' needs. Now, at 52, I was rediscovering myself as simply Lillian, a woman who had found her voice and, in doing so, had helped others find theirs too. The Reynolds family had their name on buildings and wine labels and charity galas, but I had my name on something far more valuable, a life built with integrity, a business run with dignity, and a daughter who had found her way back to, herself. Some might call that a humble victory. I called it everything.